And just like that, a memory surfaces. The first song I can recall is Little Red Monkey, although if I'm being honest, another melody from my boarding school days also echoes in my mind. Nearly everyone recognises the iconic rock group Fleetwood Mac, and most would agree that drummer Mick Fleetwood has forever been the band's unwavering heartbeat. But how many truly understand the profound personal struggles he faced or the sheer turmoil that the band's members endured behind the curtain? Now a flurry of cryptic posts and a highly anticipated documentary on the horizon signal that their epic saga is far from complete, with long-held secrets finally poised to be revealed. It's a mystery set for 2026, haunted by the ghosts of the past, and at the centre of it all is Mick Fleetwood, the iconic British percussionist who anchored one of the most successful musical acts the world has ever known. His journey began in London back in 1967 when he co-founded Fleetwood Mac with bassist John McVie and the gifted guitarist Peter Green. From there, the group skyrocketed to become a global phenomenon, one of music history's greatest success stories. Incredibly, their songs resonate with an even wider audience today than during their 1970s zenith. Despite this enduring fame, Mick has chosen a quieter existence. He's traded global tours for a peaceful life in Hawaii, an island paradise that has truly become his personal sanctuary. This sanctuary was deeply shaken after the catastrophic Lahaina wildfires of 2023 tragically burned his beloved restaurant Fleetwood's on Front Street to the ground. Since then, he has consistently used his social media platform to champion the island's recovery efforts, sharing crucial updates and highlighting his dedicated work with local charities. However, a recent video he posted to Instagram sent the internet into a frenzy, with fans and critics alike speculating wildly about its hidden meaning. In the clip, a shirtless Mick is seen basking in the sun at his Maui, Hawaii residence. He was positioned beside a stand holding a single black top hat, and he spoke directly to the camera, saying thinking about a lovely lady who sang in a band, a very special lady. Then, offering a smile and a thumbs up, he complimented the video with a simple caption, "A very special lady," followed by a dove emoji. This seemingly simple post immediately sparked widespread confusion. The black top hat, after all, is the signature trademark of his former bandmate and lover, Stevie Nicks. Furthermore, the dove emoji is an icon inextricably linked to her, particularly to her hit song Edge of 17. But complicating matters, Mick has frequently used the exact phrase, "my special lady," as a term of endearment for the late Christine McVie, especially in the years since her death. So now the question on everyone's mind is, who was he actually talking about? Following Christine's tragic passing in 2022, the band was completely consumed by grief. The surviving members universally felt that continuing as a band was impossible without her presence. Stevie Nicks in particular has been resolute in her public declarations, repeatedly telling interviewers that Christine was utterly irreplaceable. For the longest time, the world assumed that this meant the end of Fleetwood Mac for good. Through it all, Mick has always been the steady hand, the glue, holding the fractured pieces of the band together, especially when others were on the verge of walking away. So when he shared that cryptic video, social media platforms lit up with speculation that the long years of cold silence and the vast distance between Stevie and Lindsay might finally be thawing. Could Mick be teasing a new solo album, or was this something much bigger, the very first breadcrumb on a trail leading to a full-blown reunion in 2026? And let's be real, what are the odds that this was just a random, meaningless post, especially with a massive Apple documentary from acclaimed director Frank Marshall slated for release? The timing of it all feels far too precise to be purely coincidental. We've learned that every surviving member has participated in new interviews for the film, each one finally telling their version of the epic story. This just proves that even at 78 years old, Mick Fleetwood hasn't lost his flair for the dramatic and still has plenty of tales left to tell. It seems that in spite of the legendary affairs, the heart-wrenching breakups and the endless drama, he's finally ready to search for common ground and build a new path forward. But there's a powerful motivation behind his desire to reunite the band, one that stems from an enormous shadow that has loomed over him for decades. How However, before he could ever entertain the thought of bringing everyone back together, he was forced to navigate a personal and financial collapse so catastrophic that it nearly stripped him of his career, his home, and his entire identity. During the band's peak in the late 70s and early 80s, Mick wore two hats. He wasn't just the drummer for the world's biggest rock act, he was also its manager. Fleetwood Mac was a hit-making machine, selling out stadiums globally and generating a massive river of cash. Consequently, Mick embraced an incredibly extravagant lifestyle. His reality became a whirlwind of private jets, non-stop parties, and staggering expenses that inevitably pushed him toward a financial breaking point. He notoriously acquired the nickname the King of Toot due to his voracious appetite for illicit substances, a dangerous habit that ravaged his personal health just as fiercely as it decimated his bank account. It's a part of his life he has since discussed with remarkable candour. Certain publications have alleged that he squandered an unbelievable $60 million during the band's most successful period. Mick, however, has personally estimated the figure closer to $8 million, which remains a staggering and almost incomprehensible amount of money to lose. The toll during this time was not just financial. Mick's physical and mental health deteriorated significantly under the strain of his constant substance use. One of the most shocking consequences is his admission that he has absolutely no memory of 2 entire years of his life in the wake of the colossal success of the Rumours album. Here was a man who seemingly had it all, yet he was caught in a downward spiral, heading straight for a financial cliff and hemorrhaging money faster than he could earn it. But his problems weren't solely rooted in addiction. Mick Fleetwood also had a disastrous track record with his investment strategies. He had a habit of impulsively purchasing real estate, including a lavish $2.2 million mansion in Malibu and a sprawling $1.8 million farm in Australia that he almost never visited. He would later quip that he bought the Australian farm as part of a fanciful pipe dream to escape and start over, only to discover that the property was uninhabitable due to an infestation of highly venomous spiders. Mick was also known for his incredible generosity, lavishing extravagant gifts on a sprawling entourage of friends who were essentially supported by his immense fortune. What's truly staggering about this whole saga is that as Mick's personal wealth was hemorrhaging, he remained the one steering the ship for the band's finances. He served as their de facto manager and unwavering leader, tasked with the critical responsibilities of securing tour dates and ensuring every single bill was settled. On one side of the coin, he was working tirelessly to keep Fleetwood Mac operating like a well-oiled machine. On the other, his own financial world was an absolute catastrophe, crumbling into ruin. By 1984, a mere 7 years after Rumours had conquered the globe, the very man who orchestrated the sale of millions upon millions of albums found himself officially filing for bankruptcy. His filing revealed a staggering debt exceeding $3.7 million, a figure that dwarfed the value of any remaining assets he possessed. He was forced to liquidate his prized car collection and even part with some of his iconic gold records simply to survive. A financial blow of that magnitude would have broken most people, but Mick proved to be remarkably tough. He finally managed to kick his drug habits for good in 1991 and has proudly maintained his sobriety for the past 35 years. Now at the age of 78, he recounts these tales with a complex blend of amusement and deep remorse, offering them as cautionary lessons for others in anticipation of the 2026 Apple documentary. That entire tumultuous period profoundly transformed him. It taught him the hard lesson that fame and fortune are fleeting, while the music and the relationships forged, creating it, are what truly endure. He was forced to confront the fallout from his actions in a manner that was both excruciatingly painful and embarrassingly public. And yet the spectacular financial collapse was merely one facet of the immense struggle he was navigating during those particularly wild years. As his bank account rapidly dwindled towards zero, his personal life was simultaneously spiralling into an even more tangled and dramatic mess. The immense pressure from his financial troubles acted like gasoline on the emotional fires that were already raging out of control inside the band. Beyond the catastrophic loss of money, Mick's clandestine affairs were on the verge of turning their creative sanctuary, the recording studio, into an all-out war zone. Throughout that era, financial instability was a constant pressing issue, but it was the profound emotional wreckage that would inflict the most lasting and painful wounds. While Mick battled desperately to keep his head above water financially, he was also hopelessly ensnared in a complicated web of romantic entanglements that would have shattered any other group. The most notorious and damaging secret of all was the passionate 2-year affair that unfolded between Mick and the incomparable Stevie Nicks. It all ignited back in 1977, right in the heart of the legendary Rumours tour, while the entire band was confined together on a tour bus making its way across Australia. For a significant amount of time, they managed to conceal their relationship from absolutely everyone, most importantly, from Lindsey Buckingham. Stevie would later confess that if their affair had been exposed at that time, it almost certainly would have spelled the immediate and permanent end of the band right then and there. They were, for all intents and purposes, tempting fate, playing with matches in a room absolutely drenched in gasoline. And for a time, against all odds, they managed to keep the flames contained. However, everything began to unravel disastrously once the affair itself finally fizzled out. Almost immediately after things cooled down with Stevie, Mick fell head over heels for her closest confidant and best friend, a model by the name of Sarah Wrecker. Sarah would ultimately become Mick's next wife, but to add an even more painful layer to this betrayal, she was the very friend sitting beside Stevie when Stevie penned the iconic song that shares her name. Stevie was utterly shattered by the revelation, overwhelmed by an agonising and profound sense of betrayal from 2 people she trusted. She might have been able to weather the conclusion of a turbulent romance with Mick, but watching her best friend end up with the man she had just loved was a devastating blow she simply couldn't endure. The atmosphere grew so incredibly toxic during the recording sessions for the Tusk album that the other band members were eventually forced to intervene. They made the very difficult call to completely ban Sarah from the studio, a drastic measure taken simply to maintain some semblance of peace and to ensure Stevie could get through her vocal tracks without a complete emotional collapse. A chilling silence fell over the group, no one was speaking, and Stevie pointedly refused to even make eye contact with Mick while they were trying to work. Mick frequently refers to this entire period as a dark, oppressive and suffocating cloud that hung heavily over the band. On the surface, they were living a life of unimaginable luxury and professional triumph, but privately, they were ensnared in a vicious cycle of emotional pain from which there was no obvious escape. And Mick stood right at the epicentre of the chaos, paradoxically attempting to act as the group's peacemaker, while simultaneously being the primary source of all the turmoil. The deep wound from that betrayal would fester between him and Stevie for decades, standing as the core reason for their strained and distant communication even today. Looking at Mick here in 2026, it becomes evident that his recent public appeals for reconciliation are truly about a deep desire to finally mend the fences he helped to shatter so long ago. He is acutely aware that time is running out and that the window of opportunity to truly set things right is closing much faster than he'd like. Now, with more than 3 decades of sobriety under his belt, he reflects on those hedonistic nights with a clarity and perspective that can only be gained through age and wisdom. His most sincere wish is for Stevie and Lindsey to discover the same kind of tranquility and inner peace that he himself has managed to find on the serene shores of Hawaii. He desperately wants to prove that even a narrative as famously fraught with conflict as theirs can culminate in a final graceful chapter, allowing everyone to ultimately part ways as friends. This profound personal betrayal erected an impenetrable wall between the band's frontline members, a barrier that remained firmly in place for nearly 5 decades until the seismic coup of 2018 altered the entire landscape forever. The takeover, the truce and the long-awaited thaw in their frozen relationship. And while the legendary scandals of the 1970s may seem like relics of a distant past to some, the most shocking eruption in the band's long history actually occurred far more recently. In 2018, Fleetwood Mac was preparing for what was anticipated by fans worldwide to be another massively successful and celebrated global tour. But that tour would never happen as planned. Instead, events spiralled into a stunning corporate power play that left the entire music world completely blindsided, and it all began at a MusiCares benefit concert where the band itself was the guest of honour. By all accounts, it was Lindsey Buckingham's behaviour during a speech by Stevie Nicks, or perhaps even the walk-on music chosen that fateful night, that became the ultimate breaking point. It didn't take long for the news to leak. Stevie had drawn a definitive line in the sand and presented the band with a non-negotiable demand. Her message to Mick Fleetwood and the others was crystal clear. The group had a serious choice to make between keeping her or keeping Lindsey. She declared she would absolutely refuse to perform with him on stage ever again, forcing the legendary group into an impossible corner. For Mick Fleetwood, this was familiar territory, playing the role of mediator in a band famous for its internal drama. But this particular situation felt fundamentally different and far more final. The heavy burden fell on him to make the devastating call, informing his oldest friend and the sonic mastermind behind their success that his time with the band was officially over. It was a brutal role to play, casting him as the one to bring down the axe. In a shocking turn of events, Lindsey, the very man who crafted their chart-topping sound, was unceremoniously dropped and replaced by a pair of new musicians for their upcoming tour. The seismic shock of his dismissal was never going to remain a private matter, because Lindsey Buckingham has never been one to suffer a major slight in silence. Feeling deeply betrayed by the people he once considered family, he retaliated with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit alleging a breach of a verbal agreement. The ensuing legal drama was incredibly public and acrimonious, creating a toxic atmosphere that seemed to guarantee the iconic lineup would never speak to one another again. The bitter fallout from the 2018 firing left a deep and lasting stain on the band's celebrated and complicated legacy. Over the next few years, the band members took thinly veiled shots at each other in the press, with Stevie often citing the profound need to safeguard her personal well-being. Meanwhile, Lindsey lamented that the very soul of the band had been irreversibly compromised, and even the ever-hopeful Mick Fleetwood appeared to concede that the chasm between them was simply too wide to ever be bridged. He bluntly informed the press that they had crossed a line from which there was absolutely no coming back. It seemed a tragic conclusion. The whirlwind of passion and conflict that began in the 1970s wasn't fading out on a high note in a stadium, but with the gavel's cold strike in a court of law. Across the globe, devoted fans grieved the very real possibility that the classic five-piece would never perform together again, a grim silence that persisted through worldwide lockdowns and the heartbreaking personal losses yet to come. Then, when 2022 arrived and brought with it the devastating news of Christine McVie's passing, any lingering hope for a true reconciliation seemed to completely evaporate. Stevie Nicks made her position unequivocally clear. With her best friend Christine now gone, there was simply no point in even considering getting the band back together. The public largely accepted this new reality, assuming the remaining members would spend their final years in different corners of the globe, never again revisiting the incredible magic they had created together. From his serene home in Maui, Mick Fleetwood was the lone voice still holding out a sliver of hope and keeping the band's spirit alive, but even his legendary optimism was visibly starting to wane. Here was a man who had effectively lost everything: his legendary band, his dearest friend Christine, and the vital creative partnership with the man who helped him construct a musical empire. For what felt like an eternity, the dream of the classic lineup performing again seemed to be well and truly over for good. But then in 2026, something utterly astonishing occurred behind the closed doors of a recording studio, a development that took absolutely everyone by surprise. For so many years, the consensus was that the iconic incarnation of Fleetwood Mac was not just broken up, but officially dead and buried for all time. Following the explosive firing back in 2018, the vast majority of fans had resigned themselves to the painful fact that the damage was irreparable. However, in March of 2026, a photo surfaced showing Mick Fleetwood and Lindsey Buckingham together again. And this wasn't just some chance encounter or a brief phone call to settle old scores. Incredibly, Lindsey had actually entered the recording studio to contribute his talents to Mick's forthcoming solo project. This marked the very first time the two musical titans had created music side by side in 7 incredibly long and turbulent years. The story finally went public when a Swedish music producer by the name of Carl Falk began posting pictures and enthusiastic updates across his social media channels. Falk, a man accustomed to working with the biggest names in pop music, appeared genuinely starstruck by the scene unfolding before him, describing the experience of being in the room with the two legends as a completely surreal moment. According to the producer's detailed account, the atmosphere inside the studio was completely devoid of tension or any lingering awkwardness from their past. On the contrary, he observed what he described as a palpable and authentic joy coming from Lindsay. Despite all the bitter history, Lindsay was not there to rehash old grievances. His motivation was pure and simple. He was genuinely excited that his old friend Mick was finally getting the chance to create his own album. He even generously offered his distinct guitar work and signature vocal harmonies for the tracks, a clear signal that the deep creative connection between them had not been completely severed by the drama. The images of them working together again in the studio were a powerful and welcome dose of nostalgia for fans everywhere. There they stood huddled over the mixing console, collaborating on musical arrangements just as they had done more than 4 decades prior, a poignant reminder that under the mountain of legal battles, a friendship was forged long before fame. Mick, for his part, had frequently and publicly expressed his deep desire to repair this specific relationship, often telling interviewers about his dream for the band to one day function like a real family once more. That single photograph of Lindsay smiling next to Mick's iconic drum set seemed to represent the first tangible step in making that long-held dream a potential reality. While seeing Mick and Lindsay collaborating again was truly remarkable for the music world, a colossal question mark remained hanging over the entire situation. This reconciliation was undoubtedly a monumental leap in the right direction, but it addressed only one piece of a very complicated and emotional puzzle. As these two were busy rebuilding their creative bridge, the entire world was holding its breath, wondering if this newfound peace could possibly extend to the one person who arguably had the most reason to remain unforgiving. Mick's solo album was unexpectedly becoming a neutral territory, a safe haven with the incredible potential to heal old wounds and reunite the fractured group. However, the dark shadow of that infamous 2018 ultimatum still loomed large over their entire collective story and legacy. Now that Mick and Lindsay were back on speaking and creating terms, every bit of media attention shifted to the last remaining holdout, the undisputed Queen of Rock and Roll, herself Stevie Nicks. Once the initial shock and widespread excitement of Mick and Lindsay's studio reunion finally subsided, one single burning question was on everyone's mind. What about Stevie? For what felt like an eternity, she was the one who projected an image of being utterly finished with all the chaos and infighting. Having forged an incredibly successful solo career, she frequently declared to the media that her time with the band was firmly in the past. But then, in a surprising turn during July of 2026, Stevie posted something that at first glance seemed completely innocuous. It was a simple photograph, but the caption was what set the internet ablaze. It contained a quote from a very particular deep-cut lyric from their shared history. In what seemed like a heartbeat, Lindsay shot back with a response on his own social media, posting the simple yet powerful line, "I'll meet you there." For the average person, these exchanges could have easily been dismissed as just some artistic, poetic musings. But for the dedicated, lifelong followers of the band, this was something else entirely. It was the frozen love code. That specific song happens to be the closing track on their pre-Fleetwood Mac album, the 1973 classic Buckingham Nicks. That very album was the catalyst that persuaded Mick Fleetwood to bring them into the fold. It represents the absolute bedrock of their entire shared creative legacy. So for these two estranged legends to reference that exact song to one another after 7 long years of frosty silence was clearly far more than a simple coincidence. This was an unmistakable public signal, a clear sign that the icy wall between them was beginning to thaw, hinting that the rock and roll sorceress and her former flame were at last prepared to move beyond their bitter separation toward a new chapter. The fact that Mick, at 78 years old, is taking on the role of mediator speaks volumes about how deeply he cherishes the band's enduring legacy. He has been incredibly vocal, publicly urging Stevie and Lindsay to reconcile and become friends again, all in an effort to safeguard the incredible musical empire they constructed over the decades. Mick has stated unequivocally that it would be an absolute tragedy if their epic story concluded not with a song, but with a courtroom battle or a series of bitter press statements. It truly appears Mick is on a personal crusade to ensure they can find some measure of peace with one another before the opportunity is lost forever. He is keenly aware that time is running out for all of them, and he is determined to show the world that forgiveness can still be achieved even after a staggering 50 years of heartache and conflict. And it seems that his determined and heartfelt strategy is beginning to pay off. This relentless push from Mick for a reconciliation isn't driven by financial gain. The man has earned and lost fortunes many times over. This is about something else entirely. This mission is about preserving the very soul of the band. He's been playing the difficult role of the go-between, absorbing the tension and trying to build a bridge between two titans who were once the most iconic couple in all of rock music. By gently guiding them back to their origins, using powerful symbols like the Frozen Love lyrics, he's actively reminding them of the pure passion for creating music that first brought them together. His ultimate goal is to help them finally move past their historic battles and co-author a final chapter, defined not by anger, but by grace and resolution. Fans and insiders are beginning to connect the dots, realising that these seemingly small isolated moments are actually building blocks for something monumental. The sightings at the studio, the cryptic social media interactions and Mick's outspoken pleas for peace are not just isolated incidents. A tangible electrifying buzz is definitely growing. With every new post Mick shares and every nostalgic lyric, Stevie hints at the collective excitement among the fan base intensifies exponentially. It truly feels as though we are witnessing the final pieces of an intricate puzzle falling into place, all pointing toward what could be the most significant moment in the band's history, a true new beginning. Every single one of these mysterious social media hints and rumoured studio get-togethers seems to be leading to one specific, highly anticipated event. That destination is the 2026 Apple TV documentary helmed by the legendary director Frank Marshall. For decades, devoted followers have had to assemble the band's narrative from fragmented magazine articles and unauthorised biographies. However, this upcoming project is something entirely different and unprecedented. This marks the very first time the band has officially sanctioned a project like this, sitting down for what sources are describing as completely unfiltered, no-holds-barred interviews. It's being said that they are no longer shying away from confronting the most turbulent and painful chapters of their shared past. Frank Marshall has a reputation for capturing the essence of his subjects, and he has apparently filmed the surviving members in a state of profound honesty and raw vulnerability. This documentary is shaping up to be an incredibly raw and truthful film, offering an intimate look into their real lives and the incredible journey they have endured together. To finally hear Stevie speak candidly about the personal toll of those tumultuous years and to witness Mick confront his own demons without any pretense promises to be more than just a music documentary. It will be a lesson in life itself. At long last, it seems we are about to receive the complete, unvarnished story directly from the legends themselves. Even Lindsey Buckingham is taking part, offering his side of the story regarding his controversial dismissal in 2018 and sharing his current feelings about the band. It will provide a fascinating and rare opportunity to see how multiple people can experience the exact same historical events and recall them in vastly different ways. The timing of this film is what makes it exceptionally poignant. Its release in 2026 allows it to serve as both a beautiful tribute to the late Christine McVie and a symbolic bridge toward the band's future. The 2026 Apple documentary is rumoured to be titled Narrating the Chaos. This film from acclaimed director Frank Marshall promises to deliver an unprecedented and uncensored look at the real lives behind the rock and roll myth. Utilising remarkably candid interviews, the band members are revealing more than ever before speaking their personal truth about the infamous affairs, debilitating addictions, and relentless struggles that defined their path. This isn't just a collection of polished, rehearsed anecdotes. It's a documentation of genuine moments captured right in the midst of their recent fragile reconciliations. This unique timing gives the audience a coveted front row seat to witness the emotional process of long-standing walls finally coming down. As the release of the documentary approaches, it's clear the band isn't merely reflecting on their past. They are actively taking a step toward their future. In conjunction with the film's release, they are also unveiling new music that has the distinct feeling of a final concluding chapter to their epic saga. They are finally seizing control of their own narrative, setting the record straight and demonstrating to the world that through it all, they remain a family flawed, profoundly complicated, yet ultimately united. The anticipation is palpable because for the first time in nearly a decade, all the surviving members of this legendary band are joining forces to tell their one definitive story. We're about to take a journey back to their tumultuous 70s while also getting a modern-day perspective on how these rock and roll titans are grappling with their own monumental legacy as they approach their 80s. They are set to discuss the scandalous affairs, the painful betrayals, and the staggering levels of substance abuse with a startling candour that can only be achieved through decades of distance and reflection. Sharing their unfiltered truth will undoubtedly pull back the curtain, revealing to the world the very real, flawed human beings who managed to create some of the most timeless music ever made. As the global premiere date draws closer, the anticipation among fans and critics alike is building to an absolute crescendo. It's dawning on people that this documentary might just be the key that unlocks the mystery behind Mick's recent and conspicuous burst of activity over in Maui. This film is the commercial and emotional centerpiece for every single move they are making throughout 2026. This project is far more than just a nostalgic glance in the rearview mirror. It is a powerful declaration about what lies ahead for them. As the documentary is released, the band members are not only sharing their life stories, they are also unveiling the very music that will serve as the final chapter in their epic saga. However, the groundbreaking Apple documentary is merely the opening act for what is scheduled to be a massive year. This year is all about remarkable new beginnings because for the first time in an age, the three principal creative forces of the band are all igniting their solo careers in perfect unison. Stevie Nicks is spearheading this creative renaissance with a project she has mysteriously dubbed the Ghost Record. She has characterised it as a profoundly autobiographical song cycle, finally sharing the raw, untold stories of the men who shaped her life and the powerful memories she has kept under lock and key for years. By all accounts, she is holding nothing back this time, and her devoted fan base is bracing for what could be her most raw and emotionally transparent work since her earliest days in the spotlight. It's a characteristically audacious move from the reigning queen of rock, serving as a powerful reminder to the world that her songwriting talent is every bit as sharp as it was back in 1975. Not one to be overshadowed, Lindsey Buckingham has been deep in his personal studio, meticulously crafting an album he claims is the synthesis of a quarter century of musical exploration and knowledge. After courageously overcoming major heart surgery and his acrimonious split from the band, Lindsey emerges sounding like an artist who has discovered a profound new sense of direction. He's reportedly tapping back into his foundational genius, focusing on the intricate guitar artistry and pioneering production that forged the iconic Fleetwood Mac sound from the very beginning. And standing directly at the epicenter of this whirlwind of creative energy is the patriarch himself, Mick Fleetwood. His forthcoming solo album is shaping up to be an enormous celebration of his life's work, set to feature guest appearances from friends like Adam Granduciel and, of course, the signature guitar mastery of Lindsey Buckingham. Yet the most electrifying buzz circulating through the music industry at the moment isn't about a new record. It's about a revolutionary new stage. Intense speculation has been building around a potential residency at the Las Vegas Sphere, which is unequivocally the most technologically advanced concert arena on the entire planet. For a band whose entire identity has been intertwined with grand visual spectacles and all-encompassing sound, the thought of taking a final bow inside a massive glowing orb feels like destiny itself. Just try to envision the legendary album cover of Rumours or the ethereal, swirling fabrics of Stevie's iconic capes projected onto a screen that completely envelops the entire audience. While no official agreements have been signed, the sheer fact that Mick, Stevie and Lindsay are once again on good terms has elevated this once impossible dream into a very plausible reality. It's shaping up to be a very tangible possibility for the latter half of 2026. Mick Fleetwood dedicated his entire life to the near impossible task of keeping this volatile group together, often at a great personal cost to his own health and finances. He has played numerous roles throughout their saga: the powerhouse drummer, the reluctant manager, the tireless peacemaker, and at times even the villain of the piece. But now it seems he has finally realised his most profound and long-held ambition. He has successfully navigated past crippling multi-million-dollar debt, clandestine affairs and vicious legal fights to find a place of authentic serenity. His enduring legacy won't simply be the unforgettable drum beats he created, but the remarkable achievement of being the one who finally mended their broken circle. His journey proved that even after an incredible 50 years of utter chaos, a family, however fractured, can eventually find its way back to each other. Mick Fleetwood's incredible 78-year odyssey has seen him rise from the pinnacle of rock superstardom to the very precipice of utter disaster. He battled through crushing addiction, devastating bankruptcy and soul-crushing betrayal, yet he never once stopped playing that beat. Today, he has finally been able to exchange a lifetime of turmoil for a tranquil existence that was earned through immense struggle. If you had the chance to pose one single question to the band after seeing the 2026 documentary, what would you ask? Would it be about the magic they created in the studio or the relationships they shattered along the way? Be sure to let us know what you think down in the comments section. If you were as captivated by this incredible saga as we were, go ahead and click on the next video waiting for you on your screen. And please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for even more deep dives into some of music history's greatest stories, their deepest mysteries.